All right. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to In Dialogue, Smithsonian Objects and Social Justice. This is a collaborative program that is hosted by educators from the National Portrait Gallery, along with colleagues across the Smithsonian. And then this month, we are joined by our colleagues at the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden. Today, we are thinking about the question, how does artwork build empathy and open the possibilities of connecting people near and far? And we're going to consider that question as we take a look at two different objects. One that is currently on view at the National Portrait Gallery and one that is in the Hirshhorn Museum's collection. So the piece that is in the Hirshhorn Museum is called Untitled for Jeff by Felix Gonzalez Torres, and it was created in 1992. And we'll be taking a look at that in tandem with a 2013 painting called The Botanist by Hung Liu. So although we're getting together today from different places, we gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. So my name is Brianna White. My pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the educators at the National Portrait Gallery. And I am joined by three wonderful colleagues who will all introduce themselves in turn.
Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Tiffany McGettigan. My pronouns are she and her. And I am the head of education for the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Evans. I'm with the National Portrait Gallery. My pronouns are she and her. And I will be entering in or logging some of the chat information and sharing that with our presenters. And we are also joined by our colleague, Vanessa Jones, who's with the Portrait Gallery, who will be helping out with the chat as well.
Great. Thank you.
Our intention during this program is to explore empathy through conversations about art, history, material culture, and to discuss how historical and contemporary objects from both museums' collections speak to today's social justice issues. Because of our focus on empathy, we want to make everyone aware that today's program will offer many opportunities for personal reflection. So to begin, we want to define empathy to help ground our discussion. So empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. As many of you have probably experienced, empathy is a funny word. You can define it and understand it intellectually, but it actually takes life experience to truly know and understand empathy. It also takes openness to feeling for another person. So today, we're going to explore how visual art specifically can connect us to the stories of people who we have not met. So we want to ask everyone to think to themselves for just a moment. Was there a moment when you really empathized with someone else, or vice versa? Is there a moment when you felt really seen? And if you'd like, you can share your ideas in the chat.
While you're sharing your ideas, I just want to remind you that this program is being recorded. So if you turn your camera or microphone on, the video feed from your device may be captured on the recording and used for Smithsonian purposes. So please take care to conceal yourself from view and not share material that is private, sensitive, or confidential. We will ask you to engage with us and each other using the chat box during the program this evening. Vanessa will post some links. And I want to remind you all that this program is also being live captioned. To view the captions, enable the live transcript or CC at the bottom of your screen. We want to go over a few community norms as well. First, please respect others and their opinions. We encourage listening and sharing and expect all to do so with respect in an open discussion. Please consider your own privacy and that of others. Do not share personal information that you don't want others to know. Avoid inappropriate material and statements. There's no cyberbullying tolerated here. We critique ideas, not people. And please be present, patient, and compassionate. Let's create a safe space and remember that we all come to this conversation with different lived experiences, perspectives, and ideas. Even in disagreement, we can learn from each other and build community. So in response to some of the chats that we've seen, a lot of people commented that the importance of remembering connects us to the past, the present, and the future. There were a lot of comments about the importance of family and connecting us to generations that have to come. There was a lovely comment that says, we believe that we are to remember the 7 generations before us to care for the 7 generations to come. With all we do, we must think of the past, present, and future in order to maintain balance. And a lot of people reiterated the idea of making connections, not just to the past, but also to the future.
Thank you, Beth. That was really beautiful about the 7 generations before and the 7 generations after. So let us go ahead and get started. We have a lot of ground to cover and not a lot of time to do it in. So let's revisit our essential question that is going to guide our conversation for this evening. How does artwork build empathy and open the possibilities for connecting people near and far? So over the course of the time that we spend together, hang on to this question. While it's not something that we're going to be answering right now, we will come back to it at the very end of this program, and I hope that the objects that we're taking a look at and the conversation that we're having inspires you all to respond to our essential question as we close out our program. So to start us off, we are going to do a little bit of slow, close looking. So we're going to take a look at our first object, but we're going to look at it in 3 parts. So this is the top of the portrait. I'd like you to let your eyes wander over what you see from top to bottom, side to side, all around. And when you're ready to go ahead and note your initial observations about this section of the portrait in the chat. What do you notice right from the very beginning? And as you're thinking about these observations, just a reminder that observations are the things that we can see. The visual clues, the visual elements that are found in artwork.
We're noticing flowers, dripping paint, dull colors. Someone said it looks like 3 different paintings. And another comment says it looks like different stages of life are being portrayed here.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So just to call out some of those responses that Beth just said, the dripping paint, we see that in various portions, right, of the top of this painting. And we'll certainly see this dripping paint along the way as we look at all portions of this artwork. We have the flower, we've got some dull flat colors. Excellent. Okay. Now let's move on to the middle section of this piece. What more observations do you have about this section? Perhaps things you didn't see at the top.
We're seeing more flowers. gentleness, that he's holding them gently, growth. There's a landscape in the background, and somebody noticed looks like the flowers might be floating.
Okay. Perhaps the person is gifting the flowers to someone. It's definitely, we can't help in this section, but focus in on the way that the person is holding on to the flowers. It is central in this section, right? There is a stillness in his hand. Okay, excellent. Okay, and finally, this is the third and final piece of this portrait. What more do you notice? What more do you notice here?
There's a person standing to his right. And I would say
Okay, so it looks as if there is something on the right. We have the bulbs in bloom. There's actually a couple of comments about the bulbs.
Lots of comments about bulbs,
Yeah.
growth, roots.
Okay, excellent. Wonderful. Okay, so let's take a look at the entire portrait. So this is The Botanist. It was created in 2013 by the artist Hung Liu. Vanessa is going to put into the chat a link to The Botanist online if you want to take a closer look at any of the elements. So what new observations do you see now that we have the whole portrait in front of us? And while you're making those additional observations, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Hung Liu and her work. So the Portrait Gallery right now has an exhibition on view called Hung Liu Portraits of Promised Lands. The exhibition opened in August and it will remain on view until the end of May. And the exhibition really presents, it is a show completely of Hung Liu's work, but it presents her paintings, which really offer new frameworks for understanding portraiture as it relates to time, memory, and history. Hung Liu is a Chinese-born American artist. She passed away just before the exhibition opened in August. But we're going to talk a lot about this idea of time, memory, and history throughout this program this evening. And I just love the quote by Hung Liu that is on the screen. I want my work to be a comfort to people that I've never known. So Beth, what responses were you seeing in the chat about additional observations now that we can see the entire work?
One comment that ties into the quote that you just read is that someone said that they feel really drawn to this portrait, that there's a separateness. Another person commented that it looks like there's water and that there might be flowers floating, there might be a bird. I think it's giving us a lot to ponder about. A lot of people are really curious about what we're seeing and want to know more.
Right, I love that comment that there is this this connection, right? This closeness that we feel when we look at this piece. You know, the individual being represented here looks approachable, right? Looks like somebody that we might want to sit down and have a conversation with.
There's another comment I want to share that it has a very emotional connection to it. That it says that The left is black and white. It looks like maybe life or love lost, and that the botanist shows that he is strong to grow through grief and that he can rebloom, which is a beautiful idea.
It really is. It really is. And Tiffany, you and I were talking just before the start of this program. We were talking about the scale of this piece. And remind me, we had talked about how tall it was.
Yeah, I think one thing that's hard to tell when you're looking on screen is just the size of this artwork, right? If you were to see this in the gallery, he would be life size. So he would feel like a person you could actually see. So that connection might feel even stronger in person.
Yeah. So when we think about what a botanist does, we think about this idea, right, of the scientific study of plants. And that's a very scientific way of explaining what botany is. But what sorts of connections can we make between this scientific explanation of botany and what we're seeing here in this portrait of the botanist? How can we begin to make some visual connections to botany, other than, of course, the flowers and the plants that are in this painting? Jan's mentioning the cycle of life. We see all 4 seasons in the flowers. The dripping paint reminds one of stems and tendrils. And Beth, they're starting to come in. I definitely need your help.
Sure. I was just loving them. Someone noted that botany is work, and he seems to be really proud of his work. The language of flowers, beauty, diversity, a lot of comments about beauty, that botany and the presence of flowers adds a sense of beauty to this artwork. Someone's noticed that botany is a close study of one thing. When we closely study one thing, we find inner stillness and joy. Another person noted that he seems to have the garb of a priest, bringing a spiritual dimension to the painting. I don't know if that's what he's wearing, but the idea that it's a spiritual process as much as an actual physical process.
Right. Thank you. So the botanist actually happens to be Hung Lu's grandfather, her maternal grandfather, Lu Huawei. He was born in 1894. He passed away in 1962. He was a teacher, he was a scholar, and Hung Lu has said that he was really active in her intellectual formation, and he instilled in her a sense of confidence, determination, and she certainly has credited him with shaping her approach to feminism. And so in his research, he focused on the ecological systems and religious shrines of Qianshan Mountain, as well as the monks, nuns, and priests who dwelled there. So I want to move us along to this next image because I think it's really important to note with Hung Lu's work that she, for many of her pieces, she worked from source photography. And so I was reading more about Hung Lu and her approach to portraiture. And it was, when I was reading this today, it felt very timely, especially given the question that we are thinking about tonight with empathy. So for Hung Lu, engaging in portraiture was always an act of empathy for her. And she is often using source photographs for her paintings. And so really what she's doing is using portraiture, using painted portraiture to elevate her subjects. to shine a light on overlooked individuals, people that we may not necessarily know from history, her own family, as well as refugees, comfort women. She has a whole series of paintings after Dorothea Lange. And she's really thinking about who is historically been made invisible or unheard. So as you take a look at the source photograph and the painting, are there any new striking observations or aha moments that you're having as you see both of them together?
While people are thinking about that, Brianna, there was a question about Hung Lu and the size and scale of her paintings. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Sure, of course. Right, PowerPoint never does artwork any justice, but certainly does not do Hung Lu's artwork justice either. Her paintings are all really, really large scale. I think as we were planning for this program, and I've seen The Botanist in the museum, this piece is about 8 feet tall, maybe 4.5 feet wide. So it's really large scale, just like all of her other paintings. And if you have the opportunity to see her work in the galleries, you'll definitely see that, you know, on one wall we can fit one piece. They're really large scale.
And while you were telling us about the scale, we've had a deluge of comments about now the juxtaposition between the photograph and the painting. And a lot of people are noticing that the painting has really soothing colors, and there's a note that the photograph similarly has very soothing colors. And the photograph has more of a sense of place, whereas the painting, he seems to be sort of in an undetermined space.
Yeah.
And that there's also a lot of comments about a chicken potentially that we're seeing in the side of the photograph.
Excellent. Oh yeah, I do. I see the chicken. Excellent. Well, as you continue to think about these two pieces together, I did want to draw everybody's attention to some of the symbolism that Hung Lu is using in her work. So we had highlighted a few ideas earlier when we were making observations. We had mentioned the flowers. Perhaps there was a crane in the portrait. And so lotus blooms are definitely something that is consistent throughout Hung Lu's work, as are cranes. If you look at her other works too, you might see circle motifs, butterflies, but she has called cranes, lotuses, Buddhist symbols, all blessings in her work. And when we think of a lotus, we think of purity, enlightenment, rebirth. And cranes really are meant to represent eternal youth, happiness, longevity. So given all of those ideas, it feels rightfully so that that she's placed them in this portrait of her grandfather. But I want to talk a little bit about the drips that we've referenced as we've taken a look at this piece. So much of the meaning of Lu's painting has come from the way that she washes and drips her works, and how really she dissolves the documentary image that we see in the photograph, suggesting this idea of the passage of memory into history, while also working to uncover cultural and personal narratives that might often be concealed in the photographic instant. So she's created a process that she calls weeping realism. And she basically washes her subjects in veils of dripping linseed oil, so she can both preserve and destroy the image. And so this idea of weeping realism, it really surrenders the image to the erosion of memory and the passage of time, while also bringing photographs from long ago firmly into the present, really to be reimagined. And Hung Lu often talks about this idea of summoning ghosts, and I'll probably reference that again later, but she's thinking about the ghosts of history. So really what she's doing is turning old photographs into new paintings. And so it makes me think about the photos that we have right in our own homes. I know that, you know, just a few days ago, I was taking a look at lots and lots of family photographs and thinking that it was really time to update images that had been in frames for a very long time. What photos do you all have in your homes?
I have a wonderful photo of my paternal grandmother and grandfather. I actually never met my grandfather, but was sort of young in their marriage, and they're posing in front of a new car in their home just outside of Chicago, Illinois, and they just look so happy and proud. And I keep that on the piano in our house, so it's always with us.
Right, front and center. Exactly. Well, when Hung Lu described the botanist and other portraits that she created of her grandfather, she always emphasized his physical appearance. And she has this really wonderful quote, which I'm going to tell all of you before turning things over to Tiffany. I remember a lot of things: his face, his demeanor, his body language. He had hands that were very soft and big. So those kinds of things were very important for me as part of these paintings. And I just love that it was certainly something that you all referenced as we were observing the work earlier. So think of the hands of someone you love, and what do you remember about them? And you can certainly respond to that question in the chat, but I'm going to turn things over to Tiffany.
Thank you. It's such a beautiful painting. I really just feel so peaceful when I look at it. And I'm loving the responses in the chat. It's really interesting to see that some folks have photographs of loved ones who are living, grandchildren, and a lot of us have photographs of our grandparents, or those who maybe aren't with us anymore, those we want to remember. So we're going to transition now to look at an artwork that's quite different. So I'm going to ask you to take a little bit of time to look closely at this artwork. And as I ask questions, I'm just going to ask you to share them in your observations, your ideas in the chat. So the first question is simply, what do you see? Okay, great. So I see, looking at the chat, an open hand. Someone thinks it may be a man's hand. We're noticing the shadows. Someone who's very observant has noticed it's a right hand. It's a black and white photograph. Great. Some more references to the open palm. It's great. So this is a very simple image to look at. So these comments are all great. I'm going to invite each of you now to sort of interact with this a little bit. So if you would outstretch your own hand and consider when it is that you've actually positioned your hand this way. So think about a time in your life, a moment in your life when you would have had your hand outstretched in this way. Okay, lots of different responses. Getting a shot. I see some medical procedures. Those I was not anticipating. Okay, I see some others: to receive, to help someone up.
A lot of votes for handshakes.
Handshake. No, that's great.
to ask for comfort and also to console people. Donating blood, palm reading. There have been a few references to palm reading in this, with the lines on his hands being so pronounced.
These are wonderful. Thank you. I often think with this position, and maybe it's the mother in me, I think of holding my hand out to help my children. So we've noticed that this artwork seems immediately clear, and it's visually quite simple. The hand is instantly recognizable. It's in focus. It's in fact the only thing we see in the artwork. It seems very straightforward. So based on what we've observed, what questions or wonderings come to mind for you? And if you could share those in the chat. Okay, we have a question about what is the hand giving or receiving? Whose hand is it? Who does it belong to? What's the relationship between the subject and the photographer? Wonderful questions. Okay, let's get a little bit more context and go to the next slide. So I think it really helps when looking at this artwork to really understand the scale of it. This photograph is an image of the artwork as it was recently displayed at the Hirshhorn Museum. So you can see that it's really, really large. You can notice that the adult is interacting and connecting with the artwork, holding her hand out to share with her young child. In fact, this is how most people interact with the work when they see it. Let's go to the next two slides. So the artist's intention was actually not for this work to be viewed inside a museum or gallery, but for this to be in the public. He wanted everyone to have access and see it. This, here you can see it actually pictured on the outside of the Hirshhorn Museum. And then let's look at the next two so you can see a few more placements of the work. So it's often used in billboards. These billboards are in Texas and Ireland, so they've been shown all around the world. So based on this new information, I see lots of comments, oh my, that's really big. Yes, it is. So based on this new information, the scale, the medium of billboard, does anyone have any new questions or wonderings about this work?
Someone noted that it feels like a memorial. And someone commented hashtag public art, the idea of making it public, that it's for everyone to take in, that there's reaching out, reaching up for help. You want to high five it.
Oh, that's great. So it definitely gets your attention at that scale. It makes you feel like you want to connect, like you want to touch it, just the idea of a human hand. Wonderful. So I'm going to give you a little more information about this work and start to answer some of your questions in the process. So the title of this artwork is Untitled for Jeff, and it's by the artist Felix Gonzalez Torres. We've talked quite a bit about how stripped down the artwork is, that it features only this single outstretched hand. So this artwork, we would consider this to be minimalist. And minimalist artworks focus on only a few features, such as a single line, a single word, a single image. They remove all extra details. So Untitled for Jeff is an example because the work is so visually uncomplicated. But what's interesting about how Gonzalez Torres uses minimalism is that he uses it to be highly personal and public. If you think about minimalist works by other artists, they tend to be impersonal, even maybe feeling a little cold at times. They don't usually address emotional topics. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about whose hand it is. I know that that was something we were curious about. The hand pictured is a friend of the artist. His name was Jeff. At the time that this work was created in 1992, Jeff was helping to take care of the artist's partner, Ross. Ross was dying from AIDS. As many of you might remember, during the height of the AIDS crisis in the 1990s, many people were really afraid, and they were afraid to be near anyone who had the disease. Gay men were one of the first groups who were affected by AIDS. And at the time, the AIDS crisis amplified homophobia in addition to fear of AIDS itself. So Jeff's singular outstretched hand as a symbol of caring for someone who's dying, someone who much of the public feared at the time, is a really powerful symbol of love and empathy. Let's go to the next slide. But even more than being a symbol of love, this artwork is really a call to action. Specifically empathy as a call to action. With the medium of the artwork being a billboard, it meant that its placement could be anywhere, could be seen by anyone, could be seen in the community. This is really powerful. And in the artist's words, without the public, these works are nothing. I need the public to complete the work. I ask the public to help me, to take responsibility, to become part of my work, to join in. And if you're familiar with any of the artist's other works, they often had similar themes of love and fear, always with some aspect asking the public to participate. Okay, so I think, Brianna, we're ready to bring these two together.
Yeah. The moment, right, that we've been talking about, starting to make connections between these two works, and to really think about our guiding question for this evening. But we've talked a lot about these works individually. Now that they're both on the screen in front of you, how do these works together make you feel? What's a one-word emotional response that you have to these artworks? Please share your one word in the chat.
I'll share my word. I feel very peaceful looking at these two together.
Yeah, I can't help but think of just this idea of connection, familiarity, if you will, when looking at both of these pieces. And Beth, they're coming in fast and furious, aren't they?
But they're lovely. Love, loss, release, humanity. A lot of people saying humanity, reach, calm, depressing. Advocacy. A lot of really powerful words are being shared.
Yeah, it's interesting how many different emotions these elicit for all of us. So another thing I'd like to draw attention to is that the context of each of these artworks is so different. They're just very, very different works. The mediums are different, the scale is different, the style that's used is different. So I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts about why we brought these two artworks together. Someone was literally just wondering that.
One comment that I just saw was that they both share something that cannot be changed, but remaining calm through that sort of sense of powerlessness. Connection, humanity.
Yeah, representing our shared humanity. Sorry, Beth.
It's interesting. I see some comments that are about the physical attributes, and that was the first connection that Brianna and I made when we brought these together. Is the hands, the prominence of the hands in the botanist, and sort of the care that he has, and also the caring hand in Untitled for Jeff. But there's so much more than that, that sort of surface connection that we made.
One comment that brings it very much to 2022 said, pandemic isolation raises need for human touch, peace, and love. Another person said they both deal with generosity of spirit.
Right, and there's a comment that it's a wonderful pairing. It looks like the botanist could be handing those flowers to Jeff. And there's a sensitivity of the hands, great quality of work and selfhood.
And there were a few comments earlier at the beginning of the deluge talking about how these are both people that the artists had really strong connections to, and both artists in their own way depicted them with a lot of love and compassion.
Yeah, and that, Beth, that was making me think about this idea of the personal connection, right, between the artist and the subject. For both of these portraits. I know for Hung Lu, I talked about this idea of summoning ghosts, but creating portraits of her family was exactly that for her. That's what she said. And she said, they are with me all the time, but I cannot reach them. And that, you know, the memories of her family are embedded in all of her portraits, which I think is really beautiful. And that she uses, you know, the color, the lines, the texture. Sometimes she even shapes her canvases to transport her family members into our contemporary moment. And this idea that she's inviting us to look upon them as if they were our own. And so when I look at the botanist, right, I can't help but think of, you know, that familial connection, that sort of grandfatherly gaze that he has. And it's really beautiful, that personal connection.
I think the same with Untitled for Jeff, that, you know, despite it being such a visually simple work, that personal connection is really strong. I mean, just looking at, you know, the mother in the gallery outstretching her hand to show her child, making a personal connection herself between the work and someone she loves, speaks to the real power of this. And that was really, you know, Gonzalez Torres, his intention was to leave a mark. And he had this really beautiful sort of statement that he made in an interview in 1995, and I'll read it for everyone here. And finally, above all else, it is about leaving a mark that I existed. I was here. I was hungry. I was defeated. I was happy. I was sad. I was in love. I was afraid. I was hopeful. I had an idea and I had a good purpose. And that's why I made works of art.
That makes me think, if I can share, there have been a few comments about like personal connections to this. And the idea that both of these works of art, both through their scale and through the public display, it makes me think of the COVID-19 flags that were placed on the National Mall. And the idea that we've all gone through this loss, and to be able to build a sense of community through looking at artwork or a display or some kind of something that's been set up for us to all collectively sort of mourn together. There's a really it's a beautiful experience to be able to collectively share and feel that sort of empathy through universal loss.
Thanks for sharing that, Beth. I think that, you know, the connection between both of these artworks depicting someone who is really important to the artists themselves is really powerful as well. And we'd like to invite everyone to think of an important person in your own life. Maybe it's a close family member, a friend, a loved one. And as you look at these artworks, what personal connections do you have? And how do you memorialize your loved ones?
I know that when Tiffany and I were putting this program together, we were talking about all of the really beautiful flowers that are in The Botanist. And it reminded me, my husband's parents, they passed away a number of years ago, and in very close proximity to each other. But after they passed away, I think it might have been the second or third day, we went directly to our local garden center and we bought a whole bunch of flowers, and we had this spot in our side yard that had been bare since we lived in this house, and we just planted a whole bunch of flowers, and we bought a little stone and called it Papa's Garden for my husband's dad. And it has always been a place since that time where we can go and where we can think about him and talk about him. And it's lovely, right? Because it's here and it's close by, and from year to year, all of those flowers are still blooming. It's a really lovely remembrance.
And there have been quite a few people in the chat commenting similarly, that having something tangible to hang on to, whether it's some kind of a relic, a belonging, dishes, tablecloths from a grandmother, things that she touched, or creating something, writing poetry, keeping a journal, creating something in their memory, similar to what these artists have done.
I'm just reading too.
I see some references to food as well, and it's just such a powerful way to remember. My mother-in-law recently passed away, and we have her handwritten recipe books, and we've been making some of her common recipes, the things that she was sort of known for, and it's just amazing how that taste can sort of just take you right back to the person's kitchen and being with them. Perfume too, I see a comment. Yes.
There's a comment about a Snickers bar or ice cream being a wonderful way of remembering a beloved family member. And something that really resonated with me was a comment about sharing memories through cookouts and gatherings of getting people together. The idea, again, of having a community to share memories together.
Yeah, I always think of, every time I eat a raspberry, I can't help but think about my grandma, because she used to make raspberry preserves from scratch. And so it's always there, every time. Definitely, everyone keep these thoughts and your shares coming through in the chat. But as we're getting ready to end our time together, we did want to come back to our essential question, which of course it's a really big question, and it's meant to be a big question. It might not necessarily be something that we answer now, but we'd love to get your final thoughts on this idea of, how does artwork build empathy? How can it build empathy and open the possibilities of connecting people near and far? I mean, we've certainly talked about the connections, right, between the two works. We've talked about the connections between the artists and the subjects of the works. But how can artwork build empathy? How can it connect people who are close, who are far away from us?
Comment that says, we have all lost someone whose memory we can treasure, and we can talk about those memories. Sharing photographs of family members. Art shows us unfamiliar contexts. We pass down memories. Artwork connects us to memories of loss of loved ones. It manipulates our emotions. Artwork can evoke a lot of emotions. When you paint someone's face, you become closer to them. And I would add that when you look closely at someone's face in a portrait, you feel closer to them. Bring light to many common struggles across generations, races, societies, creativity, and our memories. Looking in the eyes of those who suffer can connect us with them. Artwork, there's a comment that artwork forces us to acknowledge people's pain and isolation.
Connects us all. Art connects us all to our infinite creative spirit. Love that.
There's a comment about isolation that I think is really powerful. The artist at the time was experiencing that isolation, and his partner, being sick, was also experiencing that isolation. And the single hand is really bringing our attention to that. And while it's a symbol of love, it is also, can be very heart-wrenching and heartbreaking as well. All of those emotions together. Thank you for sharing that.
Right, and I think where we are in our own lives, right, in the moment that we look at a specific artwork or consider it, really does reflect how we think about it, how we interpret it, and that's part of the meaning making, right? The personal connections that we can make to artwork. Is that in different ways for all of us, it can be relevant and accessible to our own lives. Well, as we close out our time together, I just want to say thank you. It has been a really wonderful conversation. And when Tiffany and I were planning this, we knew that this was a little bit different than past In Dialogues, but we also felt like it was exactly the right moment to introduce these two works and to consider the idea of art and empathy together. Vanessa is going to add a few links into the chat about upcoming programs for the Portrait Gallery as well as for the Hirshhorn. Our next In Dialogue program is a month from today on March 10th. And we're partnering with the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and we're thinking about work and what makes work just. But thank you from me, Beth, Tiffany. Any thank yous? Any last words to add?
Thank you to everyone who shared. These comments have been so vulnerable and really, really, really beautiful.
Thank you, everyone. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.